All right, this is the next quiz review, and this quiz is only on the quadratic formula. Okay? So you must solve all the problems on the quiz using the quadratic formula, just like I'm going to do in this quiz review. Okay? So numbers 1 and number 2 just say solve each equation with the quadratic formula. So these are the long problems. And remember, the first step is the equation must be equal to 0. Okay? That's your first step. The equation must be equal to 0. So number 1 is already equal to 0, so that's good. So start by identifying A, B, and C. A is the coefficient before the x squared, so in this case A equals 2. B is the coefficient before x, so in this case B equals 12. And C is the constant term, so in this case C equals 6. Okay, so I'm not going to copy down the quadratic formula. You have that elsewhere. I'll just say it out loud. The quadratic formula is x equals opposite of b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. And that's all divided by 2a. Okay, so here we go to substituting. X equals opposite of b. So opposite of b means negative 12. Plus or minus square root of b squared, which is 12 squared. Minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is 6. It's all divided by 2 times a, so it's all divided by 2 times 2. So now we're going to simplify that using the order of operations. So under the square root, that's going to be 144. We're going to subtract out 4 times 2 times 6. Okay, 4 times 2 is 8, times 6 is 48. So we're going to subtract out 48. And this is all going to be divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. Under the square root, we're going to do 144 minus 48. We're going to get 96. Okay, one step at a time. And now we're going to simplify the square root of 96 using our list of perfect square numbers. Okay, so I wrote those down on the side. Find the biggest perfect square. That's a factor of 96. Okay. So 4 works. 9 does not work. 16 works, and I'll tell you ahead of time that's going to be the biggest one. So 16 is a number we're going to use. So I break down 96 into 16 times 6. Do that up here. All divided by 4 still. We'll make the square root of 16 4. And now the last step might be the trickiest, but if these 3 numbers, I'll put stars there. If these 3 numbers with the stars all have a common factor, then you must divide by that common factor. Okay? So negative 12, 4, and 4 all have a common factor of 4. So you can divide each of those by 4, and you get the following. You get x equals negative 3 plus or minus 1 square root of 6, so you can just put square root of 6. And then divide by 1, which you don't have to write, so this will be the final answer. Negative 3 plus or minus square root of 6. Okay. All right, so we have one more problem like that, and then we have one page after that. So for this problem right here, 6x squared minus 4x equals negative 4. Solve that using the quadratic formula. It must be equal to 0 first, so we'll add 4 to each side. We'll get 6x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 0. Which means that A equals 6, B equals negative 4, and C equals 4. Now we'll substitute into the quadratic formula. First thing is opposite of B, so opposite of negative 4 is positive 4. Plus or minus the square root of B squared, so negative 4 squared. Minus 4 times A, which is 6, times C, which is 4. That's all divided by 2 times A, which in this case means 2 times 6. Okay. All right, now we're going to simplify using the order operations. X equals 4 plus or minus square root of 16, because negative 4 squared is 16, minus 4 times 6 times 4 is going to be minus 96. So we're going to have a negative. We're going to have the I in a minute. That's all divided by 12. 2 times 6 is 12. Okay. So now just clean up the square root. 16 minus 96 is going to be negative 80. That's okay. No problems with that. X equals 4 plus or minus square root of negative 80 divided by 12. Okay. Now we'll simplify the square root of 80 using the list of perfect square numbers. It's going to be 16 again. Okay, so here's what I'll do. X equals 4 plus or minus square root of 16, square root of 5, square root of negative 1. All divided by 12. Let's make the square root of 16 4, and let's make the square root of negative 1 I. So I get the following. I get x equals 4 plus or minus 4i square root of 5. All divided by 12. So I made the square root of 16 4, and I made the square root of negative 1i. And now again, these three numbers all have a common factor. In this case, it's 4. So we'll divide each one by 4. We'll get the following. X equals 1 plus or minus 1i, so I'll just put I, square root of 5, all divided by 3. And that's the final answer. Okay. Now the back, for numbers 3 to 5, use the discriminant to state the number and type of solutions. So you're going to have to do b squared minus 4ac. First, identify a, b, and c. Remember, these must also be equal to 0, so make sure it's equal to 0 first. Number 3 is already equal to 0. That's cool. So a equals 2, b equals 7, c equals negative 4. We'll do b squared minus 4ac. 7 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 4. So it's going to be 49 plus, because negative 4 times 2 times negative 4 is going to be positive 32. (49 plus 32 equals 81. Now, if I said what is the discriminant, you would say the discriminant is 81. I didn't actually ask you that. I just said state the number and type of solutions. Okay. So since it's positive, it means we have 2 real solutions, because when you do plus or minus the square root of 81, those are two real solutions. Anytime it's positive, it means there's two real solutions. Let's do the same thing for 4 and 5. Number 4 is already equal to 0. That's great. So we'll say A equals negative 10. We'll say B equals negative 4. We'll say C equals negative 1. B squared minus 4AC. Negative 4 squared minus 4 times A, which is negative 10, times C, which is negative 1. Negative 4 squared is 16. Negative 4 times negative 10 times negative 1 is going to end up being minus 40, which will give you negative 24. So again, since it's negative, I'm not asking what the discriminant is. If I did, you would say that the discriminant equals negative 24. I'm just saying describe the number and type of solutions. Since it's negative, it means there's two imaginary solutions. Because when you do the quadratic formula, you'll have the square root of a negative, which will give you two imaginary solutions. And let's try the last one, number 5. Number 5 is not equal to 0, so you have to make it equal to 0. So we'll subtract 1 on each side. We'll get negative 9x squared minus 6x minus 1 equals 0. So A equals negative 9, B equals negative 6, C equals negative 1. You do B squared minus 4AC. So negative 6 squared minus 4 times A, which is negative 9, times C, which is negative 1. Negative 6 squared is positive 36. Negative 4 times negative 9 times negative 1 is going to be minus 36, which will give you 0. Anytime it's equal to 0, it means there's one real solution. Because if you do plus and minus the square root of 0, it's the same answer each way. So it's one real solution. Those are 3 possibilities. If your discriminant is positive, there's 2 real solutions. If your discriminant is negative, then there's 2 imaginary solutions. If your discriminant is 0, then there's 1 real solution. And that is the end of the video for the quiz review on the quadratic formula.